I was on the fourth line of my wedding vows when I heard the heels. The paper was in my hands, folded once down the middle. 4 sentences I had written by hand the night before. April, light in Estes Park is thin and sharp, and it came through the tall lodge windows and laid itself flat across the flagstone aisle. I had just spoken the 3rd sentence out loud. I will let you take care of me on the mornings I want to prove I can do everything alone. My voice was steady. The last line was still waiting on the page. It was the one about surviving. Then I heard them, heels on stone, coming steady and unhurried, the way a person walks when they already know exactly where they are going. The steps stopped a meter behind me. There is a particular way a hand reaches for someone else's hair when it means to pull. It is not gentle, and it is not clumsy. It is decisive. My sister's fingers found the base of my wig at the nape, exactly where the comb anchored it, as if she had measured the spot in advance. She lifted straight up and back. The wig came away clean. She held it above her head like something she had won. Now he can finally see the bald cancer patient he's really marrying, she screamed, loud enough that the rafters of that 1928 lodge caught the words and threw them forward over 160 guests. A broken woman who can't even give him children. My mother laughed, not a nervous laugh, not a shocked one, a laugh with clean edges, 3 beats long, ending on a small drawn breath. I would learn later that she had practiced it in a mirror. In that moment, I only knew that my scalp was cold, that my hair had grown back 3 inches in 9 months, and it was still cold, and that the paper with my last vow was still in my hand. Here is what my sister did not know. She had just screamed to 160 people that I could never give a man children. What she had spent 9 years making certain I would never find out was that she was the reason I lost the only baby I ever carried. She believed she was exposing me. She had no idea she was about to expose herself. And in the 4th row, a man I had not spoken to in 9 years quietly stood up. 3 people moved in that room at once. In the 4th row, in a slate gray suit I did not recognize. The man rose to his feet. He did not walk forward. He did not speak. He simply stood and looked at me. 2 rows over. My brother-in-law set down his glass of water without drinking from it, releasing it slowly, like a man setting down something he had carried for a long time. And my fiancé took 1 step toward the officiant and asked, in the calm voice he used when a stranger needed to trust him fast, "May I speak?" They did not know that my fiancé, a firefighter who had learned to read a house before it burned, had spent the last 6 weeks quietly uncovering everything. The receipts, the rehearsal, a phone call from the spring of 2016. They did not know that the man in the 4th row had been waiting 9 years for someone to finally ask him one question. My name is Nora Ellison, and I am 31 years old. If you have ever been broken by the people who were supposed to love you the most, the ones who used your body, your illness, or your silence against you, I want you here for this. Drop a comment and tell me where you are listening from, because what happened next did not save my wedding. It ended a secret my sister thought she had buried forever. Let me take you back. Let me start with a refrigerator. For most of my childhood, the front of our refrigerator held a single sheet of paper, pinned there by a magnet shaped like the state of Colorado. It was my sister's schedule: ballet on Tuesdays, a math tutor on Wednesdays, youth orchestra on Fridays. My mother updated it in her careful handwriting at the start of every season, and I used to stand in front of it in the mornings, 8 years old, looking for my own name somewhere on that page. It was never there. I asked her about it once. I was standing on the linoleum in my socks, and I said, "Mom, why isn't my schedule on the fridge?" She did not even turn around. She was rinsing a bowl. She said, "You don't need it, honey. You're the lucky one." I did not understand what she meant. I only knew that being the lucky one meant I was the one who did not get a line on the paper. I filed it away. I was good at filing things away. That, it turned out, was the whole point of me. Camille was 3 years older, and from the beginning, our mother told a story about the two of us that hardened into fact. Camille had not slept through the night until she was 2. I had slept through at 7 weeks. Camille was the child who needed. I was the child who was easy. My mother said the word easy the way another woman might say, saved money, as though my not needing were a gift I had generously chosen to give the family. I understood the true shape of it when I was 11. Camille's math tutor came to the house every Wednesday for $200 a session. That autumn, I asked, at the dinner table, whether I could take piano lessons. My mother looked at me the way she looked at leftovers she was deciding whether to keep. "Camille needs the tutor. She struggles," she said. "You're smart, Nora. You don't need to be paid for." That was the year I learned the sentence I would carry for 2 decades. Being easy was not a virtue in that house. It was a form of debt. You could always be asked to wait, because you were the one who could. My father was a different kind of quiet. Walter Ellison was an accountant who kept every tax return of his career in a filing cabinet in the garage, ordered by year, alphabetical within the year. He was a man who preferred a problem that came with an answer key. He was not cruel, and he was not weak. He was tactical. When I was 14, I was in the kitchen refilling a water bottle when I heard him in the hallway, on the phone with his brother in Ohio. He was using a voice he never used in front of my mother. My uncle must have asked him something about us, about the way things were divided in our house, because my father answered quietly. "It's easier not to correct her when she's decided," he said. "It saves the argument for later." He said it the way another man might explain where he kept the good scotch. I learned silence from my father that afternoon. I learned that a house stays standing when someone chooses not to have the argument. What I did not learn until much later, until this story I am telling you now, is that a house is not the same as a person. A house can survive silence. A daughter cannot. Camille grew into exactly the woman that childhood had built. She took a marketing degree and moved into public relations for a real estate firm in Denver. And she was genuinely good at it, because she was the kind of woman who could walk into a room and quietly reset the temperature to whatever she preferred. People adjusted to her. They always had. In the summer of 2020, she married a software engineer named Marcus Vaughn, a mild, decent man with a steady salary and a habit of looking away. And my mother gave a toast that said, Camille deserved the wedding she had waited so long for. I sat at the far end of the table and clapped. Within a year, she and Marcus started trying for a baby. 6 months after that, they moved to IVF. And somewhere in there, though I could not have named the exact moment, my sister began keeping a private ledger of everything she believed I had been given, and everything she believed had been taken from her. I was on that ledger. I just did not know it yet. I met Daniel Hayes in the autumn of 2015 in the medical library at the university in Aurora, where I was a junior in nursing school. He was carrying an anatomy textbook the size of a small dog and looking for an outlet. And he asked if he could share my table. He was in his first year of medical school. We talked until the library closed. And then we talked in the parking lot. And then we kept talking for 8 months. He was, in the way people are at that age, the first person I had ever loved. Not the first I had dated, the first I had loved. In March of 2016, when I was 22, I found out I was pregnant. I want to be precise about this part, because it is the part my family would later rewrite. At the time, I was working part-time at a reproductive health clinic that served women navigating unplanned pregnancies. I saw women make every kind of decision in that building, and I held the hands of women who cried and women who laughed with relief. And I never once judged any of them, so I knew, better than most 22-year-olds, exactly what my options were. And I made mine. I decided to keep the baby. I remember the ultrasound photo, the first one, gray and grainy and impossible. I took a picture of it with my phone in the clinic parking lot, and I sent it to Daniel with 4 words underneath. I think I want this. And then one more line, call me. I told 2 people I was pregnant. I told my mother because I was afraid of her, and I wanted to get the fear over with. And I told my sister because I trusted her. Those were the only 2 calls I made. Camille was warm on the phone. She said she would drive me to my follow-up appointment at the clinic that Friday so I would not have to go alone. She said, "Let me take care of the logistics. You have enough on your mind." Friday morning, she picked me up. As I was getting into the car, she reached over and said, "Give me your phone. I'll hold it in my purse so you can just breathe." I handed it to her. I did not think about it again. I was 22 and terrified and grateful that someone was being gentle with me. Here is what I did not know for 9 years. While I was inside that clinic, Daniel was calling. He had gotten my message. He was calling to tell me yes, that he wanted this too, that he was coming. He called and he called. My sister sat in the waiting room with my phone in her purse, and she turned it off. Then, before she turned it off, she did one more thing. She used my phone. She typed a message to Daniel, as me, in my voice. "Please stop. I've made my choice. Don't contact me again." And then she blocked his number. Daniel read those words, believing they came from me. He was 23 years old and heartbroken, and he did the thing a decent, gutted young man does when the woman he loves tells him to disappear. He disappeared. He honored it. For 9 years, he carried the belief that I had looked at that ultrasound and chosen to shut him out without a word of explanation. I came out of the clinic that morning shaking. I asked Camille if anyone had called. She looked at me with the softest face I have ever seen her make and said, "No, sweetheart, nobody called." She handed my phone back. I checked it later. There was nothing. Of course there was nothing. There is never anything when someone has already erased it. I want to tell you what happened next simply, because it does not need decoration. A few weeks later, alone in my apartment, I lost the baby. That is the whole sentence. There was no one in the room. I had convinced myself by then that the father had abandoned me, that I was a woman men left. And when the cramping started in the night, I did not call my mother, and I did not call my sister, and I did not call Daniel, because I believed with my entire body that no one was coming. I went to the hospital alone. I came home alone, and I told no one, because the only 2 people who knew I had been pregnant were the 2 people who had already taught me that my pain was an inconvenience they were too busy to hold. I built a story out of that year, and I lived inside it. The story was simple. I had loved a man. I had carried his child, and he had left me without so much as a phone call. I stayed loyal to that story the way a soldier stays loyal to a country that has already fallen, long after there is any flag left to salute. I did not date seriously for 6 years. I told myself I was busy. I was, in fact, punishing myself for being the kind of woman who could be left. I was not left. I was robbed. It would take 9 years, a cancer diagnosis, and a firefighter to show me the difference. In May of 2024, I was 30 years old, and I found the lump myself. I found it because I do routine self-exams. It is the first thing they teach you in nursing school, know your baseline, so you notice the day it changes. It was a Sunday morning. The lump was in the upper outer quadrant of my left breast, small, and it did not move under my fingers the way a harmless thing moves. I called my mother before I called my doctor. I still do not fully understand why. I had not called her about anything medical in 8 years. I said, "Mom, I found something. I'm going to get it checked." There was a pause, and then she said, "It's probably nothing. You've always been dramatic." I opened the Notes app on my phone, and I typed her sentence exactly as she had said it, and I put the date next to it. I did not know why I did that at the time. I am a nurse. I chart things. I know now that some part of me had started keeping evidence. A week later, the mammogram came back abnormal. My oncologist was a calm woman named Dr. Alana Reyes, and she sat across from me in a small room and told me the truth without softening it into fog. Stage 2 breast cancer, a tumor a little over 2 centimeters, 1 positive lymph node. The plan was 6 cycles of chemotherapy, then a lumpectomy, then 6 weeks of radiation. "You're young," she said. "Your prognosis is good, but this year is going to test you." I want you to hold on to that phrase, breast cancer, because it matters later. This was not the kind of cancer that takes a woman's future children from her. My family would decide it was anyway. My family did not test well. Camille came to my apartment exactly once, with a case of coconut water and a card. And then she was busy. My mother did not come at all. She called 4 friends from her Bible study before she called me. And when she finally did, at 7 in the evening, she said a sentence I wrote down too. "Camille is very fragile right now, honey. She just started another cycle. She really cannot take on my daughter's cancer this week." My daughter? Not my daughters, just the one. My father drove out that Saturday with a Sudoku book. He set it on my kitchen counter like an offering he wasn't sure was allowed. He stayed 40 minutes. He said, "I'm sorry, honey. I don't know what to do." Then he drove home. I sat at my table and understood, with the clean clarity of a diagnosis, that no one in my family was going to stand next to me for this. Chemotherapy started in June. My hair came out in the 4th week, fast, in the shower, in a way you cannot prepare for. I called a colleague named Simone Carter, a labor and delivery nurse I had trained during her orientation year. She was 26. She showed up with an electric clipper she had bought at the drugstore on the way over, sat me on a kitchen chair, and stared at the crowd without saying a word. Neither of us spoke for 4 minutes. When she was done, she wiped my scalp with a warm cloth. And then she said, quietly, "You know your sister isn't actually pregnant, right?" I opened my eyes. She was looking at my mother's Instagram over my shoulder. Camille had posted a photo of herself holding her lower belly. Captioned Cycle 3, manifesting. "That's a stimulating shot she's holding, honey," Simone said. "That's the prep phase. She's not pregnant, she's advertising." I said nothing. Simone did not push. She swept my hair off the floor and left. Later, when my scalp had healed but stayed tender, the way irradiated skin stays tender, I chose a wig that anchored with a comb clip instead of adhesive because glue on that skin was unbearable. It was a small, practical decision. I did not know that my sister would one day study exactly how that comb released, I met Elliot Rourke that autumn in an emergency room where he had just carried in a 2-year-old with a scald burn. He was a lieutenant with the Denver Fire Department, 32, and his jacket smelled faintly of smoke even after washing. He sat down next to me because it was the only open chair. I was wearing a scarf on my head. He did not look at it. He looked at my face and said, "You look like you're waiting for bad news that's already happened." I laughed. It startled me. I had not laughed in a room like that in a year and a half. Over the next 4 months, while I finished radiation, Elliot learned to make 4 things that would not turn my stomach bone broth: plain quinoa, mashed potatoes with a little butter, yogurt with a drop of honey. I found the note on his phone once. It was labeled "Food She Can Hold." In July of 2025, Dr. Reyes told me I was in remission. Then she told me something else. My ovaries had responded well to the suppression during chemo. Her conservative estimate was a 55% chance of natural conception if I waited 2 years. I did not tell my mother. I did not tell my sister. I already knew what they would do with it. I have to tell you about my sister's 5 years, because a monster is not born. And if I let you believe Camille was simply evil, I would be doing the same thing to her that she did to me. I would be flattening a person into a story. Camille and Marcus went through 5 cycles of IVF. Each one cost about $18,500 beyond what insurance covered. And they put every cycle on a home equity line of credit against their house. That is not a decision people make lightly. That is a decision people make when they believe, with their whole chest, that this must work eventually. Cycle 1. In 2021 was the one she told everyone about. By cycle 3, she had stopped bringing it up at family dinners. In December of 2025, her 5th cycle, the last one their insurance would cover, failed. Anything after that would be $22,000 a cycle, out of pocket, on a debt that already had no floor. Marcus told me later that he came home that night and, for the first time, said 2 sentences out loud. He said, "Maybe we should talk about adoption." And he said, "Maybe we should talk about being okay if it's just us." Camille refused both conversations. She did not want a different future. She wanted the one she had been promised, and she had decided, somewhere in those 5 years, that a future had been taken from her and given to someone else. Somewhere between the cycles. She started a Substack under a false name, 41 subscribers, most of them women from her IVF support group. She wrote about her family. She wrote about me. And in the spring of 2026, she wrote one final post, scheduled for my wedding day, titled "The Correction." On the 6th of February, 2026, she ordered a wig on Amazon that was identical to mine. She had photographed the model number on the inside of my wig at Christmas, when she hugged me goodbye and let one hand smooth the back of my head. And I remember her saying, "This looks so real." And I remember thanking her. She had it shipped to her office, not her house. For the next 6 weeks, she spent 30 minutes a night practicing lifting that wig off a foam mannequin head in front of her bedroom mirror, learning the exact motion, the exact angle at which a comb clip releases. Marcus saw her doing it twice. He did not understand what he was seeing. He photographed it anyway, because by then, something in him had started keeping evidence too. I knew none of this. What I knew was that 6 weeks before my wedding, on an ordinary Tuesday, I was walking past the physician's break room at the start of a 12-hour shift, and a man was standing at the coffee machine pressing the buttons in the wrong order. He said, without turning around, "How does this thing work?" I said. "Small button before the big one." He turned. It was Daniel Hayes, older, a short beard now, a badge that read Daniel Hayes, MD, OBGYN. He had just started that week. He had moved back to Denver, he told me later, to be near his aging parents. Not for me. He had not known I was there. It was only that the city is smaller than it pretends to be. We got coffee at noon, and across a cafeteria table, over food neither of us touched. He said the sentence he had been carrying for 9 years. "I've wondered for a long time why you never called me back that morning," I said. "What morning?" he said. "The morning at the clinic. I called you 6 times. I told you I wanted the baby too. You never answered." I put down my fork. It was plastic. It made no sound. I said, "You called." He said he had the phone records. He had kept them for 9 years. I drove home that afternoon, and I did not run any red lights, and I do not remember a single one of them. I found the shoebox in the top of my closet where I keep old things, and inside it was an iPhone from 2016 cold and dead. I plugged it in. It took 8 minutes to boot. There were no missed calls in the log for that April, and for one terrible second I thought, see, he's lying. There's nothing here. Then I understood. There was nothing here because the phone had been turned off that morning before it ever reached my hand. An empty log is not proof no one called. It is proof someone made sure the calls could not land. I opened the closet drawer and found the leather diary I had kept that year. I turned to the entry from the morning of the clinic. In the top margin, in handwriting I barely recognized as my own, I had written 7 words. Camille kept my phone. Daniel never called. I had written down the lie the day it was told to me, and then I had believed it for 9 years. I did not call my sister. I did not call my mother. I called Elliot. He listened to all of it without interrupting once. And then he said, "Give me 2 weeks before you talk to her. If this is what I think it is, it's older than 9 years. Elliot used to say, when he was studying for his lieutenant's exam, that the difference between a small fire and a big one is almost never the fire. It is the second minute. It is what the first person does in the second minute. For 6 weeks, he treated my family the way he would treat a house that had been quietly smoldering for years. And he did it without ever raising his voice. He met Daniel first. Daniel gave him 3 things. He gave him the printed log of his own calls from April of 2016, which he had kept for 9 years in a folder on his own phone. So no one had to pry a decade-old record out of a carrier. He gave him a screenshot of the breakup message he had received from my number, the one I never sent. And he gave him the ultrasound photo I had texted him at 22, still there, gray and grainy, with 4 words beneath it. I think I want this. Then Marcus came forward. He gave Elliot the Amazon invoice from the 6th of February. He gave him the 2 photographs of Camille rehearsing in the mirror. He gave him a printout of the top of the Substack post titled The Correction. And he gave him one more thing, something he had not planned to record. Weeks earlier, filming in his own home, in his own bedroom. He had caught his wife practicing a laugh in front of the mirror, 3 beats long, muttering to herself. "It has to sound natural." Elliot asked him why he was doing all of this. Marcus said, "Because I finally understand what she married me for." Elliot told me 3 of the 4 things he had found. He told me about the phone log, the fake message, the Amazon receipt. He did not tell me about the ultrasound photo, and he did not tell me about the video. He wanted me to hear those the way the room would hear them, live, so that whatever crossed my face was real. So when Camille lifted the wig from my head and my mother laughed her practiced laugh, Elliot took the microphone from the officiant's stand, and he did not look at either of them. He looked at me, then he looked at the room, and he said, "I need to say 3 things." The first, he said, was about a rehearsal. He held up the Amazon invoice and the 2 photographs, and he turned the phone so the front rows could see my sister in her bathroom mirror, one hand at the base of a wig on a foam head, the second image catching it raised in exactly the motion she had performed on my hair 4 minutes earlier. "What you watched at this altar," he said, "was not a reaction. It was a rehearsal." Marcus stood up in his row. He did not speak. He just stood. The second thing, Elliot said, was about a phone call. He unfolded Daniel's call log. In the spring of 2016, when my wife was 22, she was pregnant, and she wanted to keep the child. The father called her 6 times the morning of her clinic appointment to say he wanted it too. She never heard the phone ring, because her sister had it, turned off, in her purse. And then her sister sent this. He read the fake message aloud. Then he held up the ultrasound photo, and his voice did not rise, which somehow made it worse. "She didn't just take a phone call," he said. "She took a child. My wife lost that baby a few weeks later, alone, believing she had been abandoned." In the 4th row, Daniel Hayes stood up. Camille turned. It took her 4 full seconds to place him. When she did, she set the wig down on the empty chair beside her as if it had turned hot in her hands. The third thing, Elliot said quietly, was in her own words. He held Daniel's phone to the microphone and played 6 seconds of video, my sister at her mirror, rehearsing that laugh, saying, "It has to sound natural." Then he lifted the printout of the blog. This post is titled "The Correction." It's dated for today. The first line reads, "By tonight, she'll finally understand what she took from me. You wrote this. You dated it. Your own husband found it a week ago." My mother rose halfway and said, "This is completely out of context. This is a private family matter," and no one turned to look at her because the room had already understood. Marcus took 1 step forward from his row and said it plainly, loud enough for 2 tables to hear. 5 cycles, 5 failures. She blames my wife's sister because that woman might still get to be a mother. And Camille won't. He was not cruel when he said it. He sounded like a man finally setting down something that had been breaking his back. My sister stood at the end of the aisle with her hands empty. And for the first time in my entire life, no one in that lodge was arranging themselves around her comfort. The temperature of the room, the one she had always been able to set, had left her control completely, and it was never coming back. Elliot turned to me and held out the microphone. "This is yours now," he said. I took it. I did not look at my sister, and I did not look at my mother. I unfolded the vow I had never finished, and my hand was steady. I promised to remember that surviving is not the same as being alive. I read that the people who kept me alive are not always the people I owe my life to, and that the people I owe my life to are sometimes the ones I only just met. I looked at Elliot. I said, "I still say yes." Then I said 4 things to the room. I said, "Camille, I know what you did in 2016. I don't want an apology. I want you out of my life," I said. "Mom, you knew. Dad knew. I am done being the lucky one," I said. "Elliot and I are getting married tonight, on this altar, before the sun goes down. If you want to stay for that, stay. If you don't, go." And I said to everyone else, to the strangers and the friends and the 200 faces that had gone so quiet, if anyone here has ever been called the lucky one by someone who is trying not to look at what they were taking from you, I want you to hear this. You are allowed to leave without an apology. There was one thing left. I lifted the microphone one more time. My sister told all of you that I can never give my husband children. She said it with the certainty of a woman with a medical degree. She does not have one, doctor. Reyes told me last July that I have a 55% chance of natural conception if I wait 2 years. I never told my family that number. I hid it from them. On purpose. Because I could already hear exactly how they would use it. Over the next 4 minutes, 46 people stood up and left. My mother was one of them. My sister was another. Camille left the wig on the chair. Then the officiant opened her book, and Elliot read his own vows. And the line I will keep for the rest of my life was this one: I promise that I will not laugh when the room is deciding who to laugh at. He put a ring on my finger. 114 people stayed, and some of them were crying, and we married before the sun went down. The story did not stay in that room. A guest of Elliot's, a nurse from my hospital, sat in the same IVF support group as a woman who had believed my sister for 3 years. That woman watched the ceremony video, and then she shared a clip of it in a private group of several hundred women. Within 2 weeks, 4 brands that Camille's public account was built on quietly ended their contracts. None of them explained why. None of them had to. My mother had chaired a nursing scholarship foundation for 15 years. The board met that month, sent her no agenda, and then sent her 2 sentences asking her to step down, effective immediately. I did see a lawyer. He told me I had a real case, defamation and battery both. I thanked him, and I did not file. I didn't need a courtroom. That room had already been the jury. My father came back once, at the reception, after the last guests had drifted to the hall. He handed me the old Sudoku book. Tucked inside the front cover was a folded note in his handwriting, dated 2016, that he had never had the courage to send. It said he had seen Camille take my phone that morning and put it in her purse, that he hadn't understood what he was watching until years later, and that he was sorry. I know it isn't enough, he said. It wasn't. I let him walk out to the parking lot alone, and I watched him get into the passenger seat of a car my mother was driving. I forgive it the way you forgive a house that could not have held you. You do not go back inside. Marcus moved out of their home that week, 10 days after the wedding. A padded envelope arrived at my door, all 17 of my sister's private posts printed inside, with one line on the folder. You have the last copy now. I've closed the account. I transferred to a new hospital. On my first shift there, the first baby I caught was a girl, and her mother was in cancer treatment. Wearing a scarf I recognized from the inside. We did not say anything about it. I just held her hand while she pushed, and then I put her daughter, whom she named Grace, on her chest. Weeks later, Elliot and I were walking in a park, and my hair had grown back far enough to cover my ears, and I had left the wig at home. A boy who could not have been 3 ran past me with an ice cream cone, and he did not look at me twice. I stopped walking. That's the first time in a year that no one has looked at me twice, I said. Elliot said, get used to it. There are things people do to you that leave marks, and there are things that leave shapes. If someone in your life has ever called you the lucky one while quietly taking things from you, comment "the lucky one" below and tell me where you're listening from. You are not imagining it. And subscribe. If you want to stay for the stories about the people they tried to break, finally flipping the entire board.